Hey guys, I know it's been a while since I've posted anything on here, and I am sorry about that. To try to make up for this, I've decided to have this particular video be something a little different. Even though I have my regular movie review background here, I'm not going to do just a straight up movie review. Instead, I've decided to review an entire film series. Specifically, I chose to watch a series that's always been on my list, but I never really got around to watching. And with a new installment out in theaters now would be as good a time as any. Yes, I am talking about the Scream series. No, seriously, this is actually the first time I've ever sat down and watched any of these films in full. And as to be expected for this channel, I will be very blunt about what I felt about each film in this series. So, sit back, relax, as I delve into that eternal question:
Do you like scary movies?
Okay, the first Scream film was good. I just wouldn't call it great. First, let's go over some of the positives this film had. First of all, the iconic opening sequence of the film is really well done, in that it is genuinely suspenseful, appropriately horrific to watch at times, and surprisingly emotional with how it ends. Also, the protagonist Sydney is a very lovable character, not only with how adorable and sympathetic she is, but also in how believably assertive she becomes as the film progresses. The Dewey character was also really good, in that, while clearly bumbling at times, he nevertheless was a charming, very likable character who you really want to see survive the events of the film. The kill scenes are also really well done, being appropriately brutal as hell, but not so much to where they come off as cartoonish. Finally, the climax of the film was not only really entertaining in just how batshit it gets, but also, even going in knowing who the killers were, which unfortunately is a consequence of watching something so iconic, it nevertheless provided a good explanation for why the killings were going on. All that said, I did have some issues with this film. First of all, the reveal of the killers in the film doesn't really come off as really shocking, given how practically every other person Sydney interacts with in the film is creepy and or an utter asshole. Especially the Randy character. Seriously, that guy had incel troll written all over him. Also, the film's two main gimmicks of deconstructing horror films and making a bunch of references to horror films are really sloppily done, which is pretty ironic, given how that got the film so much attention initially. In the case of the former, the laying out of the rules of horror films are way too generalized and don't really take into account that there are several subgenres of horror that really don't abide by the same rules as 80s slasher movies. And in the case of the latter, the constant references to other famous horror movies really comes off as ham-fisted and really self-indulgent. With all this said, I'd give the first Scream a B. It was good, I did enjoy it, but it didn't really come off as a great horror film to me. Okay, given that this was released just 1 year after the original film, which would make one suspect that this movie was just a cynical cash grab, I actually found myself enjoying Scream 2 quite a bit more than I did the original film. First of all, the film did a much better job when it came to Sydney's friends. In that Randy, oh good, he came back. Hooray. Is really the only one in the group who's creepy and or a douchebag. This enabled the horror of the killings in the film to hit a lot harder. Well, except for Randy's. That was more cathartic for me. It was also nice to see Dewey not be a complete bumbling idiot this time around, and more or less carry himself seriously. To the film's benefit, the deconstruction and mentioning of other horror films is toned way down. By which I mean they're not mentioned every other fucking scene like in the first film. The expansion of the barely mentioned character Cotton Weary from the first film is also a really good addition, not only in Liev Schreiber's charismatic performance, but also in the genuinely good arc his character has in the film. The meta stuff involving the film within the film Stab was also quite entertaining. The film also did a much better job at having the reveal of the killers be a truly shocking twist, given that they were characters who didn't immediately set off red flags as soon as you met them. That said, this film did have a few issues too. First of all, the Sarah Michelle Gellar character felt a little pointless, and really felt like just an extended version of the Drew Barrymore character in the original film. While I did appreciate the killer's reveals coming off as more shocking, the film's explanation of who they were and what their motivations were was kinda weak. The film also has a very flawed understanding of what kind of character Randy was, given how it tries to make you feel sad about him dying. The film also has some random moments that really don't fit with the horror setting. The arc of the Gale character also really stretches believability, given how much of a ruthless, unrepentant bitch he is during the majority of the first two films. Also, we need to address the elephant in the room. The entire opening scene of the second film really comes off as more uncomfortable than fun scary now, given what's happened in the real world since Scream 2 came out. With all this said, I would give Scream 2 a B+, because it is definitely an improvement over the first film. And hopefully the series continue to be good after this. Right? Apparently it only took 2 sequels in for this series to completely fall flat on its face, because Scream 3 is bad. Seriously, this was the first film in the series where I struggled to find anything really positive to say about it. I guess one positive I could mention is that the film does try to acknowledge that Sydney would have had severe PTSD from her experiences in the previous films. Plus, there was some enjoyment over seeing the Gale character become a washed-up has-been. I guess Dewey's also still charming, even though there are a few moments where they unfortunately decide to have him act like a bumbling idiot again. I guess I also got some chuckles from seeing Parker Posey playing an utterly twinked-out actress. And the film did leave me guessing over who the killer would be. That said, this film has so many flaws. First of all, seeing Cotton Weary reduced to being just one of the film's first victims is really frustrating, because there could have been some really fun character exploration regarding how he had become a really successful talk show host after the events of the second film. The film also just feels like everyone involved was of the mindset of, let's just get this over with. Not only in how severely dumbed down things had become, with things such as Ghostface's magic voice replicator device, all of the kills being either really lazy or just really dumb, and the utterly pointless cameo of Randy, but also in how most of the returning actors really feel like they're there just for a paycheck. The film also has some really painfully forced cameos that really have nothing to do with the horror genre. The film's satirization of the motion picture industry is also really sloppy, which, given what we know now about one of the main producers of this series, really makes these scenes come off as awkward. The film's justification for its setting also is really flimsy, and really feels like something that was just pulled out of the ass of the writer. The, I guess, twist of the film that there's only one killer this time is also very weak, and really doesn't gel well with just what we've seen the killer being able to do throughout the film. Finally, the attempts to retcon the explanation for what was going on in the first film by saying it was all due to the machinations of the villain in the third film were really stupid. With all this said, I would have to give Scream 3 a C- at best. And even then, I'm probably being a little generous here. Let's just say, I now understand why it took over a decade for there to be another Scream film after this. Okay, Scream 4 was an improvement over Scream 3, just not by much. That said, it was easier for me to find positives to say about this film. For one thing, Dewey remains a good luck charm in these films, as he not only is still charming, but also benefits from not having any buffoonish moments like he had in the third film. The kills are also done a lot better in this film, being appropriately very savage and very horrific to see. Also, this film has easily the most likable portrayal of Gail in the entire series up to this point, making her relationship with Dewey far easier to believe. Hayden Panettiere, Alison Brie, and Emma Roberts also give good, enjoyable performances in the film. Finally, the reveal and motivation of the main killer is unique in a positive way in that it doesn't try to rewrite the events of the previous films. However, this film has just as many major flaws, making this easily the most bipolar Scream film I've seen yet. First of all, the overly meta nature of the opening scene just comes across as extremely overindulgent. The film also has some major tonal problems, as the humor in it is often way too broad and feels like it belongs in a parody movie. The pacing of the film also feels a little off, in that events seem to escalate way too quickly. Sydney herself is a rather awful character in this movie, as Neve Campbell gives an utterly wooden performance that is easily her worst performance at this point in the series. Finally, the film's critiques of remakes and teenage obsession with social media come off less as insightful and more like something an entitled, judgmental old fanboy would write. Overall, even though this film wasn't outright terrible like Scream 3 was, since there are just as many flaws as positives to this film, it really comes off as meh overall, so I would have to give it a C. Honestly, it's kinda sad how this series started out with 2 solid films, only to quickly go downhill and not really recover. Here's hoping the new film will change that, but I won't know for sure until I see it myself. Okay, I was hoping this would be the case, but regardless, the new Scream is awesome. First of all, it easily has the best opening scene since the first film, in that it was actually quite intense and also was a nice update on the whole
"Do you like scary movies?"
shtick. Also, Dewey was, as always, quite enjoyable. Neve Campbell additionally gives a far better performance here than she did in the fourth film, in that she acts like she's actually glad to be in the film. The main kids, for the most part, were also good characters. The kills were also pretty well done, minus a couple awkward moments where there was some bad CGI thrown in. The revelation of the main character's background was also good, in that it was new to the franchise in a good way. The climax was also really solid, being not only very tense, but also quite satisfying in how things turned out. Finally, easily the best thing about the film was in how it took to task just how harmful and toxic militant gatekeeping in fandoms is, with the reveal and motivations of the killers. That said, there were some problems I had with this film, and I really can't get into them without spoiling parts of it, so skip to this part if you haven't seen the new Scream yet. even though you really should. First of all, the main character's schizophrenic hallucinations of Billy from the first film. I should clarify. Turns out her real father was Billy, presumably at some point when he cheated on Sydney. Which actually does make sense considering how in the first film, Billy was, let's face it, a creepy horn dog. Were bits of rather pointless, heavy-handed fan service that really didn't need to be in the film. Also, I was flat out disappointed that this film actually killed Dewey, considering that his sacrificial death to save another character would have actually worked a lot better if it had been Gale instead. Because, unfortunately, Gale's back to being kind of a bitch in this one. I also really didn't like that the film has some moments where it throws shade at recent remakes in ways that suggest that the writers simply didn't even watch the films they were talking about, but instead were all remakes are bad. Overall, I'd give the new Scream a B+. It is easily the best entry in the series since Scream 2, was really good, but did have some annoying things about it. Well, there you have it. My honest opinions about the entirety of the Scream film series. At least the entirety that exists at the time of this video. Overall, I would say that the series is good, but it definitely had some serious missteps along the way. Who knows? Between this film actually being really good, doing really well, and already having a sequel greenlit, things might be looking up for this franchise. Then again, we might just end up with another Halloween Kills. Please remember to like, share, subscribe, and ring the bell. Also, follow me on Instagram, TikTok, Twitch, and Twitter. And if you have any extra money that you're not sure what to do with, there is my Patreon and my coffee. By the way, special thanks to Patreon supporter L'Oreal McNabb.
I'll see you later.